December 2nd to be exact, and I'm here today to talk about all of the books that I read in the month of November. I don't know why I'm doing this. Anyway, I listened to 4 books in November, and I listened to 1, so that would be 5 if you can count, because... Okay, anyway, so we'll get started. The first book that I read in November is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, the 6th book in the Harry Potter series, and as always, as I've said throughout this entire, however long it's been since I've been rereading the series, it was enjoyable. I absolutely love the world, I love the characters, and I think just, even though there are things that I don't like the direction that J.K. Rowling took the characters, I still think she's a phenomenal writer. I think the world that she built is fantastic. I think that the dimensions and the depth that she puts in her characters is also fantastic, and I love that there are details that she just kind of introduced throughout the first part of the series. You start to finally see them kind of in play, and so I really enjoy that aspect. Now, as I said in my review of the 5th book, is that Dumbledore, he's a very, very broken hero. I think that he is a hero. I think he's a great wizard. I think it's right for the wizarding world to look up to him and trust him. However, I think he uses the fact that Voldemort made Harry a pawn, he uses that to his advantage. And I really do see, especially in this book, how he may care for Harry, because I think he does care for Harry, but I think he also sees Harry is the key and the solution to the problem in the wizarding world. And so Dumbledore is willing to sacrifice a few for the majority. And then you have Harry, who I've come to realize he is the boy that cried wolf. And he has so many times accused Snape and accused Malfoy and done things and said things that aren't always the truth. And so when he does say something that ultimately maybe comes out to be the truth, no one believes him because he's a boy that cries wolf. And I think part of that is Dumbledore's fault. I think just communication in this whole series is just terrible, and I think things could have been done better. Ultimately, I still think that the series is great. I love it. I do have a problem with the character of Snape, because I know how things end. I know how things kind of go. I know how things progress. I think that Rowling could have done a better job of writing Snape. So, okay, I think I've said enough about the Half-Blood Prince. I still recommend this series. I did enjoy this book far more than I enjoyed the 5th book, and the ending I think is perfect. I actually like the ending of this book. I think it's just perfect. Okay. Moving on from Harry Potter to the next book that I finished, and that is A Hopeless Romantic by Harriet Evans. And this book follows this girl, Laura, who is your quintessential romantic girl who's like, oh, he's the one! Oh, I found him! And a few months later, I'm so lonely, he's gone. And then 2 months later, he's the one! And so, yeah, so that's her history, romantic history, and her friends know this, and her friends kind of tease her about it, but also know that they don't really take what she has to say seriously anymore because of the way she usually is. And so when she gets into this relationship that is very destructive to her, and it just kind of basically destroys friendships and her job and her life, and it's just, yeah, it's just not good. And so she comes to this point where her life is just falling apart. And so what do you do when your life is falling apart? You go on vacation, of course, with your family, with your parents and your grandmother, because, I mean, that's what I know I want to do when my life is falling apart. So she goes on vacation with her parents and her grandmother. And then she proceeds to complain for 200 pages about being on vacation with her parents and her grandmother. say, the main character, Laura, she drove me absolutely bonkers. So that just kind of paints you a picture of this main character. So while she's on vacation, she goes with her parents to tour this large estate, and while she is there, she of course gets angry and annoyed, and she walks outside and she meets this guy. And of course, he's like, let's have dinner because that's realistic. And so she ends up going and meeting him for dinner, and things just kind of start to progress from there, and she fights it, but she wants it, and she fights it, and she wants it. And yeah, so that's like the first 300. That's like the first 300 pages of that story. Then the last like 200 pages, she finally gets off of vacation, goes home, and starts to put her life back together. And that is actually really interesting, and just the way that she has to rebuild her life, and it's done in a realistic way. Things aren't just handed to her. She really does have to try and work, and I really appreciate that because I don't like stories where things kind of fall apart and then they're magically put back together. And yeah, and then just the twist that she puts in the end, I really liked that. I didn't see it coming, and I really thought it brought depth to the characters and the story. And then like the last 5 pages, she wraps everything up. So the first 300 pages were, oh my goodness, I want to slap this person, and I would slap her if she was my friend. The next 200 pages were really fantastic, great character development. Actually started connecting with the characters, and the last 5 pages were the worst like wrap up ever. It's like, if I'm gonna sludge through 500 pages of a novel, give me a good ending. Give me a good ending. So I don't know if I would recommend it. I ended up giving this book a 3.75 out of 5 stars, mainly because like the 200 pages were pretty decent. If you were looking for, let's just say like a C-rated type, like Hallmark Lifetime movie, this would be a book for you. It's one of those, like the movie that you're watching, you're like, why am I still watching this? What are they doing? Stop! No! Ah! And then the last like 10 minutes, you're like, oh, and then you're like, that was 2 hours of my life. Yeah. And then the third book that I read in the month of November was My Life Next Door by Huntley Fitzpatrick, and this is your typical boy meets girl love story. So you have Samantha, who lives in one house with her mother, her single mom, and her sister, and then next door you have the Garretts. You have Jace and all of his siblings. He has like 7 siblings, and his parents, who are just hopelessly and amazingly and wonderfully in love. And when the Garretts move in, Samantha's mom forbids her girls from associating and befriending this family because she thinks they're beneath them and they're not the kind of people that she wants her kids to associate with. So for the majority of Samantha's childhood and into adolescence, she has to sit on her little like porch overlook that looks into the Garrett's backyard and just watches this family. And until one night when Jace climbs up and starts talking to Samantha, which just kind of throws her into his family, and she starts spending time next door and getting to know this family and getting to know Jace. Yeah, so I thought it was a cute love story. I really enjoyed the 2 characters. I thought they had great chemistry. I liked them together. I liked that Samantha, it wasn't like she was slumming. She wasn't like, oh, I'm the rich girl slumming. She was like, this is a guy that he just makes me feel like I'm normal, and he is in a family that is loving, and she embraces the entire family and not just the boy. And I just really love that she is so well welcomed into the family, and their story is just really fun and just really, really cute, and I really like that. And I was really enjoying this book. I was flying through it partly because I was avoiding writing my novel for NaNoWriMo, but I was really enjoying it. And then there's this twist close to the end of the book, and it kind of just slaps you in the face. It comes out of nowhere, comes out of left field, and I don't think it's handled well. I don't think that it's done well. And I don't think it's necessary. Especially just this story. It's like, you didn't really need it, and I didn't like it. I Do have to say though, I liked how it was resolved and sort of resolved, but not completely resolved. I did like that aspect of it, but it just, I don't think that the story needed it. I don't think it needed it at all. And then I thought that the ending was really abrupt, and there was, things were kind of wrapped up but not really, and you don't really know where they're going, and you don't really know what's going to happen, and I just kind of like to have a direction of where they could go and what's going to happen. But ultimately though, I still like the story. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I would say if you're looking for a cute little romance book, I would say pick it up. It's still good, and the writing is good, and the story development is pretty decent, and the characters are lovable and relatable, and it was a cute story even if I didn't like the ending. And then the 4th book that I read, I technically finished it on December 1st, but I'm saying I finished it in November, because I read the majority in November, and that is 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. This is a reread. I actually read it in May or June, so it's only been like a few months since I read this, but the next book in this series, which is 1,000 Skies Above You, came out in November, which I haven't gotten yet, which is so sad, but hoping to get it for Christmas. So anyway, so I wanted to reread it because I read this book, when I first read it, I read it in like a day and a half, almost read the entire book in one setting, and I knew that I had missed a lot of details, and I couldn't remember a lot of the story because I read it so quickly. So I wanted to reread it in order to have it fresh in my mind for the second book. I think this book is fantastic. I highly recommend it. I would say that because of some of the mature scenes, I would say 15 is probably the youngest that I would personally go. It's a fantastic story. If you're looking for a great just fantasy, science fiction type story that really just kind of gets you thinking and has great characters and has a beautiful cover, I would highly recommend this. And I'm so looking forward to reading 1,000 Skies Above You, which is the second book. And the cover is equally as beautiful. Okay, so that is 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. Okay, and then the last book, I actually listened to this book, and that is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. And this book, oh my goodness, was so fantastic. I gave this book a 5 out of 5. This is the best book I would say that I've read all year. I don't know if I would have liked it as much had I like physically read it, but from the very first word of this story, I was drawn in. The narration is mind-blowingly amazing. If you're looking for a great audiobook, highly recommend this. This story is about a 12, 13-year-old boy who's dealing with his mom who is sick and all that goes on with that. And one night a giant tree visits him, and he goes on this journey with this tree telling him stories, and the ending is just amazing. The last 2 hours of this book, I ugly cry, ugly cry, and I'm driving, so I definitely don't recommend this book if you are driving. If someone else is driving, that's fine, but yeah, it's fantastic. The narrator, the voices he has for this different characters are just so amazing. He does just an amazing job of, you don't even have to know who, you don't have to have them say who is talking, because he does the voices so distinct. So when he does a voice for the tree, you know the tree is coming, and when he does a voice for his mother, you know, oh my goodness, his mother is speaking, and it's just so amazing. It's so fantastic. I think it is beautiful story. It's a beautiful story. I was not anticipating this story when I picked it up. I thought this was a Halloween story because A Monster Calls, and I actually didn't read the description of it when I checked it out because it was just for a book for my book club, one of the book clubs I'm in, and it was phenomenal story. Oh my goodness, so amazing. I definitely recommend listening to it. I don't know what the experience would be reading it, but I think that the narrator just makes this story. It's so amazing, so amazing. So yes, listen to it if you really need a good cry, because oh my goodness. ugly, ugly cry. Okay, so those are the 5 books that I read in the month of November. I am very proud of myself for reading as much as I did because I was participating in NaNoWriMo. So, okay guys, well, let me know down below one of your favorite books from this past month was, and if you've read any of these, what your feelings for those are. And guys, I hope you're having a great reading month, and I will see you on the flip side. Bye! Bye! Hey, look who's on my lap. It's a tiger. Look how big she's gotten. She is huge. She's a huge kitty. And she tried to play with my camera earlier, and now she's sitting on my lap all sweet. Yep. Yep, yep.